All right, welcome to I Wish My Boss Told Me That, a new episode with my colleague Santiago Duarte, who is visiting us today. He's the VP for Tech Supply and Logistics at ABInBev. I've been working with Santi now for about 2 years. Impressive colleague. We had a lot of very interesting discussions already with him over those 2 years. And I've also understood that he's been talking to a lot of our campus hires, and they've learned a lot from their conversations with him on his leadership talks, talking about his career and sharing some of the learnings from his career. So I'm very happy to have Santi here today on our podcast. All right. Good. So today we welcome Santi to the podcast. Hello, Santi.
Hey, Serge. How's it going?
I'm fine, man. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm super
Tough
excited to be
times.
here. Thank you for the invite.
All right. No worries, man. We're looking forward to have you on this podcast because I heard a lot of amazing stories from other people that listened to your career advice. So very happy to have you here. And very curious about the stories that you're going to tell us. So, but let's start with an introduction, right? If you can talk us through your career a little bit, because I understood that unlike many other leaders, you had a very diverse career, right? You worked as a consultant, you worked for airlines, now you work for a beer company. So, can you take us through some of the steps in your career and what were some of the key learnings in those career steps?
Sure. I studied electrical and computer engineering actually. And what most people don't know about me is that my dad has a doctorate in engineering and I wanted to do the same thing. So I started my career in university thinking that I was going to go in that same direction. What happened at that time is that I realized that while I really love technology and it's a passion for me, there's other aspects that I wasn't exposed to as much, but I had some curiosity. So I decided to start working. And through my research in university, I was connected with GE, so GE Healthcare specifically. So I started working with them. And then my first job, I did hardware design. And then my second job, I did software developer. So I did those two things. And then through luck, if you will, I got pushed into the business side of the operation. So from university, I would say that I learned, of course, the technical basis that I have that have served me for my career, but it really taught me how to think, how to approach problems, and how to get to the right answer. Because you're not, what most people don't realize is that you're not expected to know the right answer in business, in corporate life, as you are in school. Like nobody, and you can agree with me, Serge, that nobody will in a meeting will say, you have 5 minutes to come up with this answer and it has to be perfect or you're going to fail out of the meeting. So that's a big change that most people don't realize. And it's very different from when you are in university than when you're working. While I was at GE, I learned a couple of things that are interesting. So first thing is you need to take care of yourself. We're all, first job, you're coming in very eager and you want to prove yourself and you want to grow in your career and you're trying to figure out what are the right steps to take. And we sometimes forget or neglect our health. And this is exactly what happened to me. I was doing really well and I didn't pay attention to the signals, the messages that my body was sending me, and I got sick. So I was sick for 3 months, medical leave.
Wow.
And all because, I pushed myself too hard. So that's one of the things that, I would say I learned at GE that I had to relearn a couple of times later. And, we also learned that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
No.
People tend to speak a lot more than they listen to. And I think we need to, especially in business, you need to understand before you seek to be understood. So from GE, and this is a topic that you're going to see that emerges. After 6 years at GE, I got bored with what I was doing, and I wanted a new challenge. And there was nothing really that interests me. So I ended up moving from healthcare to airlines. So I worked for a regional airline in Latin America that was looking for somebody to help them with their process improvement culture. And I knew airlines as a passenger, but didn't know them operationally. So I got a chance to really learn what an airline looks like from within. So all the nightmares that you hear about in terms of losing luggage, canceling flights, missing meals in a plane, I did all that. So I did every single operational job within an airline for a week, for 3 months. So I got a chance really to see how it works. And in Copa, that's the name of the airline, I learned that the most valuable lesson that your boss never told you is you need to have a good boss.
Yep.
If you have a bad boss and a good job, there's very little chances that you'll make it. But if you have a good boss and a not so fun job, then you'll make it, because your boss will work on developing you. And I heard your podcast, your first podcast, and it's very similar to what happened to you. You had somebody that took an interest in your career, and then they help you grow. So this is something that most people don't know when they're coming into a job. They look for the flashy title, right? So the intergalactic transformation emperor. And it sounds great, but then they're not looking at who's going to help me develop, because there's so many things that you have to learn coming in.
So that's a great learning, right? So, but how do you somehow make sure? How do you take that advice and really apply it, right? How do you make sure that you have a good boss? Because it's not something that is entirely in your control. For sure, not if you change companies, right? When you change, for example, from GE to the airline, I guess somewhere there, this is an unknown, or not?
It is and it isn't. So I got a chance to interview with the CEO, the COO, and the CFO of the company. And I assumed one of those three guys was going to be my boss. And I liked the three of them. So I said, these are guys that I could work with. The lesson for me is that I came in and my boss was the new VP of HR, whom I never met, who was new in the company, and we didn't see eye to eye. So it was a very interesting 2 years of lessons. I learned a lot of the things that I don't want to do, to be very honest. But one of the things that he taught me, and it kind of reemphasized the take care of yourself message, is he told me life is a constant struggle or a constant juggle of three balls. One ball is your health, one ball is your family, and one ball is your work. So if things get tough, make sure that you grab onto the balls that break, like your health and your family, and you let go of the ball that bounces, which is your work. And this is another thing that people don't realize, right? They sometimes sacrifice their family or their health because of work. So after 2 years of banging heads with my boss, I decided that enough was enough, and I quit my job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went back to consulting. So while I was at GE, I was doing consulting. I went back to consulting, but this time in manufacturing. So I learned so much about operations in airlines that I went into manufacturing consulting. So I was living in Panama, but with projects in Mexico and Barcelona. So very, very interesting combination. And what that taught me is you need to follow your passion. Right? So everybody talks about, you need to like your job. You need to follow your passion. You need to look for what you love to do. And I go back to, it's really difficult to find what drives you if somebody asks you that right away. But if you start going back and remember when you were a kid, what is it that you like to do? What is it that could keep you interested or focused or busy for a long time? And for me, it was two things. One, it's learning how things work. That's, it's something that makes me tick. It's what drives me, is I want to understand how things work from within. And the other one is to fix things. So I really always enjoyed to be able to know how they work and then be able to fix them. And then the consulting piece, it kind of made sense.
No.
So I did that for about a year, but I was traveling too much, and to be honest, living in Panama, projects all over the place, and I'm not from Panama, so I decided to close shop there and move to Colombia with my parents to figure out what was the next step. And through that process, I got contacted by a company that most of you probably know, called Genpact. And Genpact has a consulting arm that helps their customers set up their shared service centers and then get them up and running. And that was my job for Latin America. So I was responsible for all of South America, so Mexico to Argentina, including Brazil. And I did that for 5 years. So I worked with different clients in different countries. I lived a year and a half in Brazil, so that's how I learned Portuguese. And in Genpact, I learned that you have to take care of yourself. So you have to put your mask on first. I traveled all the time, so this is a lot of my analogies will come from the plane, as you guys will see. But
put your mask on first. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, when you're on the plane, right? You hear the flight attendants telling you, you have to put on your mask on first.
Okay.
And then you help your friends. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing at work. You have to take care of yourself first, and then you help your friends. So it doesn't mean you have to step on your friends so that you can be successful. It means take care of your job, take care of your targets, take care of your responsibility, and then help your friends. Then help somebody else. And this is something that with Genpact I learned a lot is you need to cover your bases first, and then you look for how you can help other people. And then
it's a way of prioritizing in the end. No, it's a way of prioritizing, making sure that you're focused on the things that that are key to your role first, before getting distracted with all the work that other people might be throwing at you, right?
It is that, of course, it's on the work side, but also, Serge, if you extend this to your whole self, so your family. So if your family is not in a good place, you're not going to be in a good place. So you cannot do your job well. If your health is being impacted, you're not going to do your job well. So put your mask on first. Don't try to, don't try to be brave and then put somebody else's mask, because then you know what's going to happen there. They told us in the plane. And then, interestingly enough, my first client with Genpact was SAB-Miller.
There we go, beer.
And that's how the beer connection got made. So and I worked with SAB-Miller throughout a couple times in 5 years. So I helped them set up their shared service center in Colombia. And after 5 years with Genpact, again, I got bored. So I called SAB-Miller and asked them if they had an opportunity for me, and ended up joining SAB-Miller. In SAB-Miller, I learned a very different company than ABI, but I learned that you have to be more like the chicken than the lizard.
Okay. You'll have to explain this one.
Everybody always asks for the explanation. So when I say you have to be more like the chicken, there's a common misconception that if we ask who lays more eggs, the chicken or the lizard, then
I have no clue, man. I know chicken lays quite a lot of eggs. I have no clue about the lizard. So.
Everybody assumes it's a chicken because we eat eggs for breakfast, so it's chicken, right? But the reality is that the lizard lays 20 eggs in one go.
All right.
Why you don't hear about this is because the lizard lays 20 eggs and is silent. The chicken lays one egg and it makes a lot of noise. Make sure everybody knows that an egg just came out. So this is what I learned. I learned that you have to make noise. You have to make noise constantly, and you have to make sure that people understand what you're doing and they understand the value that you bring to the organization. It's not about hiding problems. And, it's actually the contrary to that. You need to make sure that people understand that things are happening because you are there. It's not because you're super lucky and the universe is aligning. Yes, there are problems, but I'm managing them. And of course, you need to let your boss and your leaders know so that if there is something that they can do to make your job a little bit easier, they can step in.
But how did you figure that out? Because I know for myself that is something that I think it took me how many years? Probably 5, 6 years after graduating before really figuring out, what were some of the things that made me tick. The first years I really had no clue, right? And so I went into a job and okay, I gave everything to do my best in that job. But for me, it was never clear, man, this is what I want to become. This is the type of job I want to have. I found it out after several years. And when I talk to a lot of, fresh graduates, they seem to have the same uncertainty. They join the corporate world, they join their first company, and they're not really sure what they want to do, where they want to go. And they have all these question marks. So how did you figure that out?
It takes a long time. And I think it boils down to, Serge, is what's important to you, right? And earlier we were talking about, in a different talk, we were talking about success and how success, what is success? And I think success is very personal, right? It depends on person to person and what's important for that person. And I think success changes over time. And you and I have seen it sometimes when we look at OPR profiles and somebody says, I want to be a director. No. That's success for them. So it's obviously it's title focused, it's career focused. They don't say director of what. So you can say, well, you're going to be director of the door. You'll be happy with that. but it's a director. So they're looking for the title. But the big question is, when you think about success, what does that bring to you? How does it make you feel? What are some of the things that are accompanied by that notion of success that you have? And this is a way for you to try to find out. I always go back to, what did you enjoy doing when you were a kid? To me, that gave me a lot of clues. And it took me, I think in my case, Serge, it took me probably 10 years to figure that out. But I remember my favorite toy, if you can call it a toy, was a toolbox. So an actual toolbox that I used to carry around my parents' home. And I used to take apart phones and TVs, which, my parents, now that I have a son, I realize how permissive they were and how lucky I was. So, but it took me some time to really think back, is like, what did I like doing when I was a kid? And then how does this translate to my career? Because I never thought about, well, this is the job what I want, and these are the roles that I need to have to be able to grow within ABI or within any company. I just, without knowing, I focused on how can I learn more? How can I fix things? How can I do more? But it's a very, I think it's a long introspective journey, and it's not an easy one. And most people, I want to say most people figure it out eventually, but it does take time.
Yeah, I think you also need to experiment, to try to figure it out. Try different things, see what you like, see what you do not like, and sometimes make mistakes and do a job that you really don't like, but at least you have the experience, you learned something out of it, and you know what you don't want, and you can keep on searching for the thing that you do want.
Fully agree. So this is one of the lessons learned that I talked about with the new hires, and this one I owe to my wife. So whenever we used to go out for dinner, I would ask her, like, well, what do you want to eat? And she would say, whatever, anything. So then I would say sushi. And she's like, no, not sushi. Okay, fine, pasta. No pasta. So I would get really upset. It's like, man, you told me anything, I gave you 2, and you're already saying no to those 2 things. So I realized that asking somebody, what do you want, is really difficult. So if I say, what do you want in your career? What's the next move for you? Some people know it, but most people don't. So I think the better question for yourselves is, as you look through, what is it, the direction that you want to take is, what don't you like? Mm-hmm. Which are the spaces that you don't want to go? So then you start narrowing the scope. So for example, if in my wife's context, then I would say, well, we're going to go for dinner. What don't you want? Then she would say, I don't want a burger, and I don't want pizza. So it's like, okay, fine. Anything else? And then you narrow the scope and you say, well, sushi. You didn't say sushi, so now we're going for sushi. So it works, but it works the same way in your career. So I can ask you, Serge, where don't you want to go? And then perhaps you say, well, I don't see myself as a marketing person, or maybe you do. But it's easier for, especially as you're coming in, as you're starting your career, then you say, well, I know that I'm not built for the marketing, the creative side, the shapes and colors and all those pieces that are less quantifiable. Then it makes it easier for you to narrow your scope.
Yeah. No, it's a great analogy. I never thought of it like that, to be honest. And then while you were talking, I was also kind of thinking, man, how did I figure this out, right? Because the one thing that I enjoy today in my job, and you know what is the thing that I'm passionate about, is people, right? I love to lead big teams and work with people and engage people, develop people. But if I would go back to my, let's say, childhood, even until the age of 18, I was a very introvert person, right? I would never take the lead. I would not stand in front of the class and take the lead. I was more the follower, being very quiet. You would have to pull something out of me. But on the other hand, if something happened to somebody in the class, I would be the first to be there and help that person, even if that was not my best friend. It could have been anyone, right? So very interesting to see that somehow it was hidden there, probably, right? Because I was always there to help people out, but maybe not obvious to become a leader, because I was more introvert rather than extrovert, and other people were taking the lead, let's say, as the leaders in the class. Yeah? So I think, sometimes you even need to figure it out and try it. Yeah? Like you said, man, I don't want sushi, but let's give it a try first. Let's see if I like the sushi or I don't like the sushi, and then make up your mind.
No, but that's a great point. So I'm also an introvert, by the way. So these are things that, misconceptions that everybody thinks, that it's like, well, if I'm not an extrovert, then I'm not going to grow in my career. Not necessarily. A lot of our peers are introverts, and it's just what you're comfortable with, right? How do you recharge the batteries? It doesn't mean that you cannot be trained to speak in front of people. It doesn't mean that you cannot be trained to get up and give a presentation, and it's fine. You learn those things. This is a skill. Does it mean that it's going to come naturally to you and you're going to feel like this is your natural state? But maybe yes, maybe no. I incline more towards the no, but that's more a reflection on me. But it's not something that is going to hold you back.
Yeah. No, there I believe the 10,000 hours rule. The 10,000 hours. So I think even as an introvert, you can stand in front of a crowd and engage people and show the energy. The moment that you've done it for 10,000 hours, right? Because then it becomes natural. Maybe somebody who is more of an extrovert, is already ready to do that and engage a crowd naturally. But 10,000 hours, I think people can learn anything.
I fully agree.
So a lot of learnings here, right? I just took some notes here of all the key tips that let's say you wish your boss had told you that before, right? So one on work-life balance, to really balance the health, family, and work, balls, and make sure you focus on the ones that don't bounce back. The importance of a good boss that you also experienced yourself, following your passion and how to figure out your passion. And I will never forget the chicken versus the lizard, which I think is a great analogy, but so true, man, because a lot of people are working very hard, laying a lot of eggs. Nobody notices. And they will not make the career that they want to make, because it all happens somewhere in the dark, in the basement where nobody has seen it. So great analogy, great tip for people. Indeed, man, I think we can keep going on for hours like this. So again, great session, some good learnings. Thanks for joining us, Santi. Stay safe over there.
Thank you for the invite. I think this is a great initiative. So I've heard your first episode. I haven't heard the second one. That's on my to-do list or my to-hear list.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great initiative. And thank you again for the invite. I think this is very fun. And it'd be good to see what people want to hear more about. And then if I can help in any time in the future, let me know.
All right. Good. Thanks, Santi. Cheers.
Cheers. Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to us. We'll meet again soon with more interesting stories and insights that will make you think, I wish my boss told me that. Cheers.